they left the women for dead. A 6.6 magnitude earthquake hit Afghanistan this week. And thanks to a rule from the Taliban, the rescuers are not allowed to touch the women. So they can rescue all the men, but the women are being left under the rubble. Well, why don't they just have women rescuers? They don't allow it. It's the same thing with doctors. Women can't go see a male doctor, but they don't allow women to go to school to become doctors. What do women do? Suffer and die. One witness said he saw women fleeing the house and then realized they didn't have their hijab on, turn around, go back in the house, and then the house collapsed on them. But then the men are not allowed to touch the women, so they just get left screaming and crying under the rubble. And also, all the first responders that are there are all male. So even if they do get pulled from the rubble, or they're not in the rubble, they're just injured, the men can't treat them. They have to wait. This is just heartbreaking news. I'm cool with you practicing whatever religion you want to, as long as it doesn't hurt people. And that hurt people. Not being able to treat people lying in front of you, you can't save them because of your religion, that hurts people in a time of a crisis. Anyway, let me know what you think about this and everything else. It's a Sunday. Happy Sunday. And I'll talk to you a little bit. Okay. I love you. Bye.
You know what I told my husband? I told him all the men in Afghanistan must be fucking gay because, like, they don't want to see any women. They don't want to see any women. Like, you don't want to see any women? For real? Women aren't allowed to talk to men, aren't allowed to look at men. And men can look at men and talk to men, go to the gym with other men.
Did you guys know that on September the 1st, there was a devastating earthquake in eastern Afghanistan and women died because men refused to touch them? Reports have indicated that the Taliban adhere to a strict interpretation of Islam's gender segregation rule. So in Islam, you can't touch a man that you can hypothetically marry. So someone that isn't your father or your brother, etc. But the Taliban have interpreted this so severely that they refuse to even physically assist women in life-threatening situations. Because they have this strict no skin contact with any man that isn't related to you, this has led to the denial and the delay of aid. Women were buried under the rubble. Women, young girls, little female babies died under the rubble because men prioritized assisting their male relatives and men and male children that they could touch. Do you know how bizarre that is? Do you know how actually insane this whole concept is? This is not the first time this has happened. This happened before. In 1998, another earthquake hit Afghanistan in the Takhar province, and because of this gender-based restrictions, any efforts that were going to saving women and little girls under the rubble were hindered. In fact, male physicians were prohibited and encouraged not to speak or examine women that were injured and dying. So many preventable deaths occurred because of this rule. It's insane that 30 years later, this has happened again, and I haven't seen any videos or anyone talking about it. Do you understand how deeply ingrained your cultural norms have to be, where your beliefs take the precedent over humanitarian needs and aids and saving lives? I don't know if Afghanistan could even be saved at this point.
What would you do if it were you? So you are a rescuer. There's been an earthquake and you discover there's a woman buried under rubble. Now, she's not a member of your family, yeah? So your religion says you're not allowed to touch her. But if you could, you'd pull her out and save her life. What they're doing instead is saying, I'm sorry, mate, you're not a member of my family. I'm not allowed to touch you. You're going to have to die, mate. Now, I'm going to show you pictures of some of the women who need rescuing. But I want to remind you what Afghanistan used to look like in the living memory of some people who are still with us today. This is what they used to look like in the 1970s. Things have changed now. So now we have a situation where you have women with children who have to rely on relatives to assist them after an earthquake. Many of the volunteers are men. Many of the victims are women. So what are you supposed to do? They asked Jesus this question all those years ago. If the rules say you're supposed to rest on a particular day, but someone needs healing, what do you do? Jesus said, if someone needs healing and it's meant to be your day of rest, you go ahead and heal that person. And I think Jesus would say, if you have committed yourself to be a rescuer, to volunteer for people in times of need, and your religion says men and women are not meant to touch each other, for the sake of healing, helping someone, you're just going to have to touch them, help them any way that you can. What do you guys reckon? Should you follow the rules and men and women shouldn't touch each other? Or do you say it's peak for you, you're just going to have to die?
This is how fast a country can change. This is how fast things can go downhill. Never think it can't or won't happen here, not in my country, because it can. This is one of many reasons that it's so important to keep the separation of church and state intact. Republicans are already saying they want us to be a Christian nation. They're saying the quiet part out loud now. It's up to us to believe them and take them at their word. If you don't know what the 7 Mountain Mandate is, please go look it up and educate yourself on what it is. It should scare the crap out of you, whether you're a Christian or not. And if you haven't seen The Handmaid's Tale, check it out as well. It's happened to other countries already. Never think it can't happen here. They already have the plans laid out. In the words of Tim Walz, if you have a playbook, it's because you plan to use it.
Too much labor, all day, every day, therapist, mother made, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, live to attend him so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her, you make me do too much labor, all day, every day, therapist, mother made, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, live to attend him so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her, you make me do.
Can you imagine living in a world where women can't speak in public? Not even to each other. In today's Afghanistan, this is the harsh reality for many women. Under Taliban rule, nearly every basic freedom has been stripped away. Women can't speak loudly in public, not even to their friends. They're forbidden from leaving the house alone and must be fully covered from head to toe with not a single strand of hair visible. Even female news anchors must wear masks on TV. Girls are banned from receiving education beyond elementary school, and when they get sick, they often can't even see a doctor. There are almost no female doctors left, and male doctors aren't allowed to treat them. Public restrooms? Off limits. Windows at home? Covered. So no one can even see that a woman lives there. Once Afghanistan was modern and vibrant. Women could study, work, and speak freely. Now many can only see the world through the mesh of a burqa.
Women are no longer allowed to sing, recite, or read out loud in public in Afghanistan. This is because their voices are deemed too intimate and should not be heard. So if a mother wanted to sing to her child in public to soothe them because they're crying, they're prohibited from doing that. They're also prohibited from getting an education that exceeds the 6th grade level. Women are also required to hide their entire bodies, including their faces, to avoid temptation. Women are not allowed to look at men who aren't related to them by blood or by marriage. They are not allowed to be transported without a male guardian with them. And an Afghan woman who is just 1 year from completing her law degree had to completely forego all of her education. Some people have made the point that animals now have more rights than women in Afghanistan.
5 years old, 7 years, 9 years, 6 years old. These are girls already sold into marriage, many too young to even know their own ages. 8 years. They're often prompted by their guardians. 6 years. The husbands they'll go to are a decade or more older. The last to talk is 5 years old. The youngest, in her father's arms, is a 7-month-old baby given in lieu of medical bills. The girls have no say. This in one of Afghanistan's poorest villages. And the deprivation here means girls are being sold into marriage earlier and more often. There's not enough room in the tent for all the parents who want to show us their young daughters they've sold. We don't want to sell them, she says, but we're poor and we have to eat. Hajira had fetched an above-average price, more than $6,000. Then she got injured, and the deal was called off. I'd already sold her to a family, her father tells us, but they brought her back when she got injured and said they couldn't take care of her, so I never got any of the money. Now he's on the hunt for another buyer. Once final payments made for his eldest daughter, she'll be sent to her new family. She wants to study and is too young to question what's happening.
When you got married?
4 years ago, a community forsaken. Thousands of Afghans flooded Kabul airport, desperate to flee, and many, having worked with the U.S., begged American soldiers for a chance to keep their freedom.
I have all documents to go U.S.
As the Taliban took back Afghanistan, and after 2 decades, the United States withdrew.
That was very, very bad scenario for us, not only for my family, for all the Afghans, especially those who work with international NGO and for the U.S. During that time, we have to say, we lost our hope.
This is a man we'll call Mohammed, who's still in Afghanistan, and whose identity we are concealing and voice we are altering. He was a humanitarian coordinator for more than 20 years. He worked with USAID, the UN, and others to promote women's rights, expand education, and bring together community leaders from across the country to build peace.
What were you trying to accomplish by helping the U.S. and the UN in Afghanistan?
The United States tried to develop or increase democracy in Afghanistan and human rights, especially rights for women and children. I tried to educate people, and that was my responsibility. It was a good chance for me to serve my people, my community, especially in remote areas where they had no access to anything, no education, no health services, no roads, and no water.
But Mohammed's help for his homeland nearly cost him his only son. He was kidnapped by the Taliban and tortured for nearly a month.
They said they would need $400,000 to release my son, which was not possible for me. Finally, they accepted $60,000. I had to sell everything. I lost my house. I sold my car. Even after I received my son, they messaged me that you have no more rights to work with UN international NGOs, especially with US projects. Otherwise, you will be killed, or we will kill your family. It's very bad memory that I have. And my wife, after many years, she's not mentally okay.
The family is not okay. Today, the threat they face is daily. When the Taliban took over, they released his son's torturers, who are now local commanders.
This is the 4th house which I changed. During the 4 years, when me and my son go to the bazaar or market, we just put on masks and sunglasses to not be recognized by anyone.
Under Taliban rule, life for Afghans who aided America has become a living nightmare. The Taliban administer their vengeance through torture, drowning this former member of the security forces, shooting this former police chief. But America's Afghan allies have nowhere to go. Soon after inauguration, President Trump suspended the refugee admissions program, and in May, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem rescinded Afghans' temporary protected status, which allowed them to live in the U.S. for up to 18 months. She said Afghanistan's conditions, quote, do not meet the requirements for a TPS designation, and that Afghanistan has had an improved security situation. In late July, President Trump suggested he wanted to take care of only some Afghan refugees.
What is America's debt to our Afghan war allies that kept our veterans safe over there? There's been some talk about sending a lot of them back.
No,
would you let your administration do that?
We know the good ones, and we know the ones that maybe aren't so good. You know, some came over that aren't so good. And we're going to take care of those people, the ones that did a job.
He was so happy that he is the President of the United States. But he surprised everyone by what he did. You know, the executive orders put on suspension.
A man we'll call Abdul is a former English teacher, including of girls. He worked with the U.S. Embassy and American Council for 5 years before the Taliban takeover. He'd been approved for a P-1 visa, designated for at-risk refugees, referred by U.S. government agencies and NGOs. He was just waiting for his medical check and flight when President Trump suspended the program.
We're changing your voice. We're blurring your face. What's the risk that you face today?
2 options, detain or kill. If it's known that I was a person who worked with the U.S. Embassy and American Council, especially with the people of America, there is no justice, there is no court. They would just order their soldiers to check their aim and just shoot you in your head. I do not have a plan for now or for the future. That is the situation at this time in Afghanistan.
And Afghanistan under the Taliban is one of tyranny and tribulation. Dissent is met with public execution. Unemployment and inflation are high, and women have been silenced, barred from receiving an education or even participating in almost all aspects of public life. Some of their homes are now their prisons.
I no longer know what will be the future of us, the future of my students, who still didn't even complete their education. And these thoughts hits me hard. So by the course of time, even I feel depressed. Why were we left behind? What crime did we commit? We gave all of our ability. We gave everything we had. And now we are living in limbo. We are living anonymously. We are hiding in a corner of our home.
Hiding and hopeless. 4 years later, American allies and many Afghans have never felt more alone. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.
We don't have diplomatic relations with the Taliban, but they are, quote, ready and willing to work with you on migrants. So will you send women and children back to Afghanistan and the Taliban?
I've made it very, very clear that our first priority with those that are living in Britain illegally is to deport men. It is men that are clearly the more perceived danger. And by the way, you talk about the Taliban. The Germans are doing this already.
Can we?
Germany already has a deal with Afghanistan.
But can we clear this up, Mr. Farage? Because on August the 26th, you said women and children, everyone on arrival, will be detained.
Yes.
Is that correct? Will you detain the women and children? Yes. Will you send them back?
Yes, women that arrive by boat will be deported immediately.
To Afghanistan?
Yes, if necessary.
You will send women back to Afghanistan, just
I'm
on
really
the
sorry.
record.
I'm really sorry. We have a massive crisis in this country.
Okay, but just
and
so
I am
the
more
British
concerned,
public understand,
I am more concerned.
You will send women and children back
I am more concerned,
to live under the Taliban.
I am more concerned about the rights of British people than I am about those who come here illegally.
Yeah, but you've said two things about this, so I'm trying to clear it up.
Because what I've said is...
on the 27th of August, you said we're not even discussing women and children at this stage.
One, those that arrive by boat will be detained. Men and women will be detained and deported. Children, of course, we'll have to know that we're sending them off somewhere sensible.
So you might not send them back.
Hang on, if a 4-year-old kid arrives, chucked on a dinghy, we would have a duty of care, all right?
Okay.
But hang on, the numbers here are so tiny,
but I
it's
just
almost
want to be
irrelevant.
clear, because
and then what I said
I'm
was,
not going to go into all of the human rights issues of all the countries.
Then what I said was, we then have the separate problem of those already here.
Okay,
who've come
but
illegally.
I'm just asking you
because
you've said
deportation,
two things on this. Let's, for clarity, women and children from Afghanistan will be sent back to the Taliban.
For clarity, those that cross the English Channel will be detained and deported, men and women.
Okay,
children will have to think about it.
That's clear, and that's helpful,
and I made
because
that
you've
clear.
said two things.
Then, when it comes to deporting those that are living here illegally, our priority with that is to deport as many men first.
We spent 14 years in Afghanistan, and I mean the core period between sort of 2001, which was not long after 9/11, when George Bush Jr. convinced us that actually it was Afghanistan that were harboring Al Qaeda, and we went in there with not much of a plan, but really spent what was an insurmountable amount of time in Afghanistan. And we just literally ran out of the country, not just the UK, but the US as well, and just handed the country back to the Taliban to say, there you go, you can have the country back now. We fucked it up, you can do what you want. So many of our soldiers, men, women, lost their lives in Afghanistan. And you've really got to take a step back and think, what were we actually doing there? And why did our soldiers lose their lives? Why did civilians lose their lives? Why have millions of people been displaced as a consequence of that? Because we're back where we started, with the Taliban in rule. And there have been so many things that have gone backwards for people living in Afghanistan, particularly women, where the Taliban has just been rowing back on so many things, stopping young girls and women from going to university, stopping them from working, all sorts of rules are designed to put back that oppression the Taliban had for so many years. And so when you hear Nigel say, well, we're just going to send the women back to the Taliban, you think, when are we going to acknowledge that we are part of the problem? We are part of the problem that created the problem. We fucked up this country, but it's not the only one. Libya, destabilizing the regime over there with no real plan for what's going to happen afterwards. The whole region became a cell for terrorism. Syria, you can go way back to Iraq. I mean, the list is endless of wars that we have created for whatever reason and literally just gone and looked the other way and said, look, this is none of our business now. It's just an absolute disgrace. It's a disgrace, isn't it, to be honest with you?
Hasty retreat that they led out of Afghanistan. They have left $85 billion worth of American equipment in the hands of our enemy, the Taliban. 75,000 vehicles, over 200 airplanes and helicopters, over 600,000 small arms and light weapons. The Taliban now has more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the countries in the world. But it's not just weapons. They have night vision goggles, body armor, and, unbelievably, the Taliban now has biometric devices, which have the fingerprints, eye scans, and biographical information of all of the Afghans who helped us and were on our side over the last 20 years. There is no plan by this administration to get those weapons back.
They call this Bush Market. Here you can find so many things left behind by the US. Look at all the flares. These are American. Yeah, they look like it. This can be my souvenir. How much you sell these for?
30 Afghani.
30 Afghani, that's a good deal. Tell them I'll buy 3 of them.
Doesn't have any difficult for us for any checkpoint or something?
I don't think so. No? Because it's nothing electric. All it is chemicals.
It was the West who created ISIS, both directly and indirectly. Don't shake your head, even Tony Blair accepts that. President Obama made the case very clearly just a month or 2 ago. ISIS, he said, grew out of our invasion and occupation of Iraq. It's an example, he said, of how we should aim before we shoot. And he was right about that. But what is less well known, I'm giving the information. What is less well known? What is less well known is that this game started very much longer ago than that. How did the Taliban and Al-Qaeda come to be? They came to be because the British and American governments, principally using the money of the same satrapies in the Persian Gulf who are paying for the war in Syria now, built up this monster of Islamist fanaticism and extremism. Don't believe me? Watch Rambo 5. Watch Rambo 5 and see the dedication at the end of the movie to the freedom fighters of Afghanistan, who were, of course, to become Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. It goes back even further than that, but I've only got 8 minutes, and it takes me 8 minutes to get my name and address out, generally. So I'll make my point that our culpability in the creation of ISIS is unanswerable, even from the mouths of those who are principally responsible for it. We're responsible for it. I'm giving the information, so the responsibility is both direct and indirect. We didn't just invade and break and destroy and scatter to the 4 winds all the pieces of Iraq that have not yet may never be put back together again. The reason we've got ISIS in Syria is because the same United States and Britain have been pouring money, material, weapons, political and diplomatic and propaganda support for the rebels. And every gun, every piece of material that we delivered to the battlefield in Syria ended up in the hands of either ISIS or Al-Qaeda or one of these other groups. That too is not contestable. Yes, sir.
Just because we may have a historical responsibility for the actions, the creation of ISIS, does not mean that we have not learned from our mistakes.
Oh, trust me, brother. Anybody listening to this debate is only too well aware that you haven't learned from your mistakes. I'm listening to the same kind of Orientalist claptrap that I could have heard at any time in the last few decades. We had a young woman up here saying we needed to educate. No, your point's finished. Somebody actually came here in Oxford and said we need to educate the Iraqis. The Iraqis were teaching algebra when we were painting our faces blue and living in the forest. You think you need to educate the Iraqis?